Good morning, student. In previous video, already have completed the angiosperms, some of the important characters. How to here microspores are formed, how to megaspores are formed. In previous video, already have discussed. In this video, we are going to see pollination and fertilization process in angiosperms. What is meant by pollination? Diagrammatic information. The process of pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the pistil is also known as pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of pistil is also known as pollination. Pollen grains after dispersal from the anther is carried by wind, that is anemophily, water, that is nothing but hydrophily. Pollen grains are transported from one place to another place through abiotic agents like water and wind. Pollen grains are not only transported by the abiotic agents but also transported by the biotic agents like animals. Okay, that is nothing but zoophily. Different types of animals are involved in pollination process. Okay, here insects, birds, next one bats, next one ants, next one squirrels, next one snakes. Different types of biotic agents are involved in pollination. Here generally two types of the pollinations are mainly occurs in here, especially phanerogams, flower producing plants. The first one is indirect pollination. The indirect pollination mainly seen in angiosperms. In angiosperms, the pollen grains are fall on the stigma. It is not to directly fall on the ovule. The pollen grains are fall on the stigmatic region. This type of the pollination is also known as indirect pollination. Indirect pollination seen in angiosperms, or whatever the gymnosperms. In gymnosperms, due to the absence of ovary, the pollen grains are directly fall on the ovule. Why in angiosperms the pollen grains are fall on the stigma? In angiosperms, ovary is present. That's why the pollen grains are fall on the stigmatic region. In gymnosperms, due to the absence of the ovary, the pollen grains are directly fall on the ovule. This type of the pollination is also known as direct pollination. Here, two types of the pollination: direct pollination, indirect pollination. Right? Here, for example, in this concept, we are going to see only angiosperms characters. This is actually one angiospermic. Here, pistil or carpel. The pollen grains are fall on the stigmatic region. Later, the pollen grains are germinated on the stigma by the chemical process. The pollen grain germination is nothing but a chemical process. From the stigmatic region, specific type of the chemicals are released. That chemicals are mainly helpful for germinations of the pollen to from pollen grain. Right here. Once the pollen grain is germinated, the pollen grain is transported through the tissue of the stigma and tissue of the style and finally reach to ovule. This is nothing but ovule. Finally reach to ovule. This is ovule. Later, the pollen to entered into embryo sac in different ways. The pollen tube enter into embryo sac in three ways. First one is called porogamy, second one is called mesogamy, third one is called chalogogamy. Right here, inside of the pollen tube, two male gametes are present. The two male gametes are released into inside of the embryo sac. The two male gametes are released into inside of the embryo sac. Generally, during the development of the pollen tube, from that pollen grain, two male gametes are synthesized, that two male gametes are released into inside of the embryo sac. Here this type of the pollination mechanisms are mainly involved in, okay, here first of all angiosperms. Next one, in angiosperms indirect pollination is involved, but in the gymnosperms direct pollination is involved. Already we have completed the pollination mechanism in angiosperms. Now what type of the fertilization mechanism is mainly involved in angiosperms? Actually, from that pollen tube, two male gametes are discharged into embryo sac. But the two male gametes are fuses with different components of angiosperms. The two male gametes are must and should involved in fertilization. In angiosperms, especially inside of the embryo sac, inside of the female gamete, two types of the fertilizations are mainly occurred. This is nothing but female gametophyte. One more name is nothing but embryo sac. The ploidy of the female gametophyte or embryo sac is N. Here, two types of the fertilization. First one is syngamy. One more name is nothing but true fertilization. One more name is called real fertilization. One more name is called sexual fertilization. What is meant by syngamy? Here, one male gamete fuses with egg. One male gamete fuses with egg to form diploid zygote. This is called syngamy. True fertilization, real fertilization, sexual fertilization. It was first discovered by Strasburger. Next one, triple fusion or vegetative fertilization. What is meant by triple fusion? Three haploid nucleus are involved in fertilization. Three haploid nucleus are involved in fertilization. Male gamete one haploid nucleus. Two polar nuclei combine together to form diploid secondary nucleus. Here two haploid nucleus. Totally three haploid nucleus are involved in triple fusion. Right. What is meant by triple fusion? One more name of the triple fusion is nothing but vegetative fertilization. The second male gamete fuses with the secondary nucleus. The male gamete ploidy N, the secondary nucleus ploidy 2N. The resultant to triple fusion, that is nothing but a triploid primary endosperm nucleus. The second male gamete fuses with the secondary nucleus to form triploid primary endosperm nucleus. The ploidy of the triploid primary endosperm nucleus is 3N. This is nothing but a triple fusion. The triple fusion was first discovered by Navasin. Here, syngamy was first discovered by Strasburger. Triple fusion was first discovered by Navasin. That's why here two types of the fertilizations takes place inside of the embryo sac. This phenomenon is also known as double fertilization. Two types of the fertilizations such as syngamy and triple fusion takes place inside of the embryo sac. This phenomenon is also known as double fertilization. Here must and should one important point here involved in this concept. In angiosperms, double fertilization occur. Double fertilization is unique events in only angiosperms. Actually here after complete the fertilization, the zygote is converted to embryo. The ploidy of the zygote is 2N. The ploidy of the embryo is 2N. After complete the triple fusion, the primary endosperm nucleus is developed into endosperm. The ploidy of the endosperm is 3N. Endosperm supplies the food material for the development of the here embryo. This is totally endosperm. After fertilization, this is totally endosperm. The endosperm main important function is to supply the food material for the development of the embryo. Right. In angiosperms, endosperm is a post-fertilization product. The ploidy of the endosperm in angiosperm is 3N. But what about the gymnosperms? In gymnosperms, there is no true endosperm. There is no true endosperm. In gymnosperms, female gametophytes act as an endosperm. It is very important need bit. In gymnosperms, female gametophytes act as an endosperm. In gymnosperms, Triple fusion is completely absent. Triple fusion is completely absent. The product of the triple fusion is nothing but endosperm. The type of the triple fusion is completely absent in gymnosperms. That's why in gymnosperms, female gametophytes act as an endosperm. In gymnosperms, female gametophyte supplies the food material for the development of the embryo. In gymnosperms, the ploidy of the endosperm is N. Why the ploidy of the endosperm N in gymnosperms? Because of in gymnosperms, female gametophyte act as an endosperm. The ploidy of the female gametophyte is N. That's why the ploidy of the endosperm is also Na. That's why in angiosperms, endosperm is a post-fertilized product. Post-fertilized product. In angiosperm, the ploidy of the endosperm is 3N. In gymnosperms, endosperm is a pre-fertilized product. The ploidy of the endosperm in gymnosperm is haploid. That's why two types of the fertilizations are mainly takes place in embryo sac of angiosperms. One is a sangame, one more is a triple fusion. Two types of the fertilization takes place in embryo sac. This type of the fertilizations are nothing but a double fertilization. This is only unique features in angiosperms only. This is about that pollination and fertilization mechanisms are mainly involved in angiosperms. Thank you all of you.